Hey friends, welcome to the Kidsmen Collective podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ralston, and today's episode is called Volunteer Roles That Multiply You and Sustain Your Ministry. So, in this episode, we're going to cast some vision for volunteer roles that are going to matter for your ministry, not just warm bodies in a room, but actually strategic roles that are going to expand your leadership and sustain your ministry long term. So, to get started, let's, as we do many episodes, ask a question. What happens on a Sunday morning when you can't be there? This is a hard one to wrestle with. And honestly, I think it's probably going to do some digging into your own self-awareness to see, are you struggling with some pride in this area or control, or are there some places that, might just be an area that's a challenge for you to let go of. And so I know for me, for personal experience, why am I telling you that I think that there's some pride involved in this? Because for me, there was. As a Kidsman director overseeing a ministry, I whether my brain actually thought this cognitively and or I verbalized this, really at the root of what I was doing, I believed that if I didn't show up on a Sunday, the ministry wouldn't happen without me. And so part of that is a pride thing, right? Part of that is, okay, I don't think people can do the job that I do, or I don't trust them to do the job that I do, or they don't do the job the way I would want them to do it. And so I was struggling to release that to leaders. Another part of that is maybe we're just simply not training or equipping volunteer leaders to step into those positions, into those roles. So consider what would happen to your children's ministry if you didn't show up on Sunday. First of all, this is a very real life thing. We will not be at church 52 Sundays of the year. It's simply not possible. You go on vacation, you get sick, you have a kid that gets sick, your flight gets delayed on the way home from a trip you were supposed to be home from yesterday morning. Like, there are things that are going to happen that are going to prevent you from showing up to church on Sunday. So how do you set yourself up as a Kidsman director or leader to make sure that you have volunteer leaders who not only multiply you, but in the long run, actually sustain the ministry? So, let's just jump in and consider what that could look like for you. So, just a kind of the background of this is shortly after I started on staff, I was on staff at a pretty big church. I saw a lot of kids on a Sunday, typically, about 150 to 200 children on a Sunday. And shortly after I started on staff, I was asked to go on a mission trip out of the country with the staff team. And so I agreed to go on this trip, and I was new to the ministry, like probably had started, I don't know, maybe March or April. And then I was going on this trip about 6 months later. And so only 6 months had gone by that I'd been in my role. I was still learning things. I still was learning people. I was still trying to figure out what did it look like to be in this position, to lead this ministry, to do that well. And then I went out of the country to some place where I did not have access to them, and I was basically 12 hours time difference. So when they were all showing up for church at 9 and 10 a.m., I was going to bed at 9 and 10 p.m. in a different country where I could do absolutely nothing about the fact that a volunteer was calling out, or somebody wasn't going to show up, or I didn't know how to handle a situation because I couldn't handle it because I wasn't there. So as I processed through this, I had to come to this place of realizing, like, the ministry has to be able to function without me. It is not about me. It's not my ministry. It's God's ministry, and God has equipped me and called me to lead this ministry. And He puts me in that place as a manager of the ministry, but it's not my ministry. So if that's the case, how do I make sure that this ministry can run without me and can function if I were not to show up? Um, and this is also very practical, right? You're going to have emergency situations or something come up that you simply cannot prevent not showing up to church on Sunday. And so when those things arise, it's different, I think, when we have a plan, right? We know, okay, we're going to be gone on vacation in 6 weeks. I'm going to talk to volunteers for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to make sure they're set up. I'm going to make sure they know what's their job is while I'm gone, who's responsible for what. I'm going to cover all my bases. But what do you do if you wake up and you have to go to the emergency room on Sunday morning, or you have to take a child to the emergency room and you just simply can't be there? So setting yourself up practically in a way that allows the ministry to function while you're not there. You don't want to be the single person that makes it all function. So we're going to talk about how do you structure your team in a way they'll be able to carry on while you're out. And so I do want to state that it does start with you. You are the kids ministry director or leader. You are overseeing this ministry or this portion of the kids ministry at your church. And so you are the first leader, but you shouldn't be the only one. And so as the kidsman director or leader overseeing ministry, your job is to recruit and train and to put people into those roles and to equip them to be able to do them. And so part of that process is ministry duplication. So training someone else to be you when there's a need to be you. And so one of the questions people asked a lot when I was on staff is, who are your two? Who's pouring into you and discipling you? But also, who are you pouring out and discipling into? And part of that looked like leaders, right? That is, how am I training somebody to be me and to do my kids' ministry job? Another question they would ask is, who are the two people in your ministry that you're training to take your job? Not because they're actually going to step in and take my job, but because if I left tomorrow or some crazy situation happened and I couldn't be part of the ministry for the next 6 months, who could step in and fill that role and that need? And who would be equipped to do that? So ministry duplication is super important when you're thinking about these leadership roles. And so one of the primary volunteer positions that I put in place, actually I inherited, to be honest, the woman that I took the job over from when she stepped out, she had these coordinators in place. And I watched those roles be the integral part of ministry. Those became my go-to leaders. Those were the people who stepped up to serve in a capacity that was different than just being in a classroom, not to diminish that role whatsoever. But I've talked about this before. If you think about a volunteer board of directors, you're going to have, at a nonprofit organization, you're going to have a president, you're going to have a vice president, you're going to have a treasurer, you're going to have a secretary. Every one of those people plays a different role. And so the coordinator was really my go-to person. I asked them to take on a lot more responsibility and to make bigger decisions for the ministry as a whole. So they were the person I was training to be me, right? They are the ones who are going to duplicate me and they're going to be my ministry duplication. And because I was at a large church, I had 3 services I was covering. And so each service had a coordinator. And so consider what that would look like for you, how to bring in a coordinator, but really how the structure kind of could look, or some key positions you could put into place are going to start with that coordinator. So that's your right-hand leader. They know how to take care of an emergency situation. They know what the protocol is if you have to call an ambulance or the police. They know how to alert security. They know how to shelter in place. They know if a teacher doesn't show up and they're a no-show on a Sunday, what do? They know how to get a hold of people that they need to get a hold of. If you have a medical emergency, is there a nurse or doctor on campus? They know how to troubleshoot some of the check-in issues or things like that. If you have a power outage, what do we do? I mean, they know how to handle the situations and call the shots just like you would do to figure it out in the moment. And so obviously there's probably layers to that, and they're going to need to be trained to do those things. But asking key people who understand and get your ministry and the heart and the mission and the vision, those are the people you would want to equip to be your coordinator or right-hand man, right-hand leader. Also important, I think I've probably mentioned this in the past, but as a Kidsman leader, I know how this goes. You are often required in 35 places at one time. You have a kid who's throwing up. You have a teacher who's not a no-show to the classroom and parents are trying to drop off. You have a check-in machine that stops printing. You have a new guest arrives in the lobby and you need to help check them in and take them to their classroom. You are trying to talk to this teacher in a classroom who is going through a really hard time and you want to check on them. Those are all super important things, but you don't have to be the person to do all of those. So if a coordinator is your right-hand man, they would know how to handle or do any of those situations and take care of them as needed. You can also equip other people in those roles. I highly, highly recommend having a check-in team and or greeters, depending on the size of your church, depending on the need, depending on the space and your building specifically. But to create a team of check-in people and greeters who, if you have a brand new family who's never been to church before and they show up and they have 5 children that they need to add to the system and take to 5 different buildings on campus, or one building on campus, whatever that looks like, that your greeter and check-in team would know how to handle that. So again, depending on the size of your church, you might have 2 positions. You might only have 1 position or 1 role that is both greeter and check-in. It depends, but that's important. Another layer, obviously, which is probably what we talk about the most in Kidsmen, is teachers and leaders within those classrooms. And so we need people who are in the classrooms, who are teaching the Bible lessons, who are facilitating the crafts, facilitating the worship times. Sometimes this could look like a teacher from a stage if you have a large group from maybe your elementary age group, or sometimes preschools even have a large group worship time depending on the church. So who are those teachers and those roles that you're putting people in those spaces? One that often gets overlooked is student leaders. Who are the student leaders, the students that are the big kids that get to be part of your classroom and serve and disciple the younger children? And ultimately who teachers, the adult teachers, are then also pouring into those student leaders. So those are some definite places where you can start equipping leaders within your rooms. And I think that that's going to be a very valuable thing. Lastly, the other position that we don't talk about a lot, but is highly, highly impactful and extremely important for your ministry, is security. Sometimes churches, depending on their size, they might have security officers, they might have paid sheriffs or police department, they might have guys in uniform, they might have plainclothes officers, they might not have any officers. Maybe they just have a volunteer security team. Whatever that looks like, you need to either advocate to your leadership team that you need security officers and volunteers specific to your ministry area, or you need to recruit and train a security team of people. And so there are several reasons why this is a key role to have and why it's important. But basically, you need people to know what your emergency procedures are specific to your children. And because children's emergency procedures are often different than adult emergency procedures. So if you have only volunteers in the security team who are trained in the adult procedures, that procedure may be different. So everybody might be evacuating the building, but all of the littles from early childhood, all early childhood little kids are staying and sheltering in place. your security team needs to know children are in the building and these are where the kids are and these are who they are and this is who they contact. So they need to know specific to your area. So these are by putting these roles into place, you are now multiplying yourself. You are saying, great, if a new family shows up, I don't have to be in the lobby. My greeter team can handle that. My check-in team is perfectly equipped to figure out how to get them checked in, to add all 5 of those new kids to the system. If the, printer jams and the printer's not spitting out name tags, the check-in team is equipped and knows how to handle that and can have the conversation with parents. I'm so sorry, the check-in system is glitching. We're fixing it. We'll be right with you. Like, you can equip people to handle those situations. Teachers and student leaders can be the ones who are helping in the classrooms if there's situations there. So how do you put people in those roles and those positions in order to multiply yourself and ultimately multiply the impact of your ministry, because you are able to handle a lot of things at the same time because people are equipped to do that. And ultimately, that's also discipleship. You've now discipled these leaders to step into these roles and to own those roles. So those are some key positions that you can have within your ministry. You don't have to have all of them, depending on the size of your ministry, obviously, but those are some key options for you to be able to consider, to think through whether or not you would want to implement those or further develop those leaders with some specific skill set. So how do you make those roles meaningful? So we don't want to just assign roles. You want to assign a purpose. You want them to take ownership. I've said this before. Clarity is kindness. I have a friend who says this all the time, and I'm always like, yes, you're right. This is so true. Be clear with what the expectation or what the job description is for them to do that specific role, and ask people who you think really do have that skill set to step into that position. For example, if you have a volunteer leader who is not good under pressure and does not handle multitasking well, probably putting them in a check-in position is not the most ideal, right? We know the printers jam. We know that parent tags don't print out. We know that there's a malfunction in how something works. The system itself stops working and you have to reboot it. And you have a line out the door of parents who are trying to check in their kids and it's raining. Like, that's a lot of stuff, right? And so if somebody doesn't handle stress well, that's probably not a good role for them. So also maximizing the impact that people have by putting them in positions and roles that actually make sense for them and they're not just about filling a spot, right? So assigning them a role, assigning them ownership of that, letting them have a purpose for why they're doing what they're doing, creating a clear set of expectations and job descriptions so they know exactly what they're getting into, and allowing for them to have better follow through as they're executing the role that you're asking them to. So volunteer leaders are going to thrive when they know why and what they're being asked to do. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of making some changes and adjustments or thinking through how to make these roles meaningful. So the last piece that I just want to encourage you with is you don't need to recruit right this second 30 new people or 30 new volunteers. Like, that's not what we're asking or what we're suggesting, but start with building a core foundational team with the right people. So this is a hard thing sometimes because it's like, I would struggle with this. I would have super amazing core teachers in classrooms that were super faithful. They got it. They understood the vision. They understood the mission. They loved kids well, and they were likely fantastic teachers. And those were often the people that I would ask to step out of that role and step into a higher calling to be a coordinator and to be my right-hand man. Why? Because they got the mission and the vision. They understood. They were good at teaching. Likely, if they're good at teaching, they can give advice and tips and tricks to teachers who are saying, I don't know how to manage this. Like, I need help in the classroom. Those people get it. And that's who we want to raise up to be leaders, to take on more responsibility. And I get that it's hard. Now you've lost a teacher in that role, right? You've gained a coordinator. So you're gaining somebody who can be you, but you also lost somebody who is filling a key role that you needed to be filled in your ministry, and they were really good at it. So ask those people to step into the roles that they can step up into leadership, and continue to recruit people who will be good for the other roles. Likely you're going to have a lot of people who can be good teachers, but aren't going to be great coordinators. And that's okay. That's not what they're called to do. They're phenomenal leaders in some other capacity. So continue to recruit people to fill the spots that you need filled, but also equipping the people who are key leaders to step up and fill higher roles, filling your positions and building your team with the right people in the right places. So ask yourself, who on my team could be trained to take one step up? Do you have somebody who is a greeter and they're only greeting at the beginning of service, that you could ask them to step up and be a check-in person or be a coordinator? Or could they be a teacher? What does that look like? How do you ask and give people the opportunity to serve in a higher capacity? So who on your team could be trained to take one step up? If this is something that you want to talk about, if you want to chat about some strategy for building up your team and calling people to step into higher leadership roles, let's hop on a call. I have a free 30-minute consulting call. You can book that call on the link on my homepage, or you are welcome to find the link in the description, and I would be happy to talk through some strategy. Who are the key people on your team? Ask some questions to get to know what your ministry looks like, and go from there to figure out a plan and a system that's going to make sense for you, that's going to be sustainable, but ultimately is going to multiply you and your impact of your ministry. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining me today on the Kidsmen Collective podcast, where we're all about nurturing leaders and impacting generations. Before you go, I want to invite you to take the next step in growing your ministry with confidence. I've created a free Kidsmen Leader Assessment designed just for leaders like you. It walks you through the 5 key areas: purpose, people, programming, physical space, and procedures, helping you celebrate what's going well and uncover where there's room to grow. Whether you're a brand new leader or you've been leading for years, this tool will give you a clear picture of where your ministry stands and where it could go with a little strategy and support. Head over to ozarkministryconsulting.com to get started. You'll find the assessment right on the homepage, quick, simple, and packed with insight. And if this episode encouraged you, share it with a fellow leader or leave a review. We're better when we grow together. Until next time, keep leading well, keep loving big, and remember, your ministry matters.